Hey, so you know how wherever you go in the world today, you can get at least a rough sense of what to do and where to go? It all comes down to how some symbols have become globalized. An exclamation mark in a yellow triangle means warning, a red circle with a line through it means stop. Through much of the world, we might even be used to seeing text written in the Latin script. All of this is because the globalized Latin script and languages of design have been driven by Western colonialism or economic activity across the world. But what might be surprising to you is that much of South and East Asia had their own globalized script nearly 1,000 years ago. A monk who traveled the thousands of kilometers from North India to China to Japan, trekking through unimaginably different cultural and intellectual worlds, could have read scriptures from each place along his journey with a little bit of practice. All he'd need was a basic understanding of Indic scripts along with the logic of East Asian writing systems. This is the story of Siddham, the Indian script that for hundreds of years was the premier globalized script of the Buddhist world. I'm Anirudh Kanisetti, historian and author of Lords of the Deccan. Welcome to Thinking Medieval, where every week we tell you something new about our complex, innovative past. Always feel free to check out our research and citations below and join us in figuring out how to think about our messy, bloody, dazzling history. So, we in India love to boast about our ancestors' influence over the rest of Asia, more in this video here. But the history of Siddham script once again shows us that these processes were kind of complicated. Other major cultural regions accepted Indian ideas as part of a globalized culture, usually driven by local political, economic, or religious factors. Let's look at China, for example. Classical Chinese scripts were logographic, using symbols to express sounds and concepts simultaneously. Logograms varied by region and were written and pronounced in a dizzying array of ways. If you've ever tried to learn Mandarin, my condolences, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. The problem is, for early Chinese Buddhists in the 2nd and 3rd century CE, they just couldn't find the right symbols to express Indian concepts and sounds like kra or jva. If there was no uniformity in the sounds and concepts that Chinese letters were expressing, then there was no guarantee that Chinese Buddhists were even reading and understanding the same ideas as their Indian peers. But the situation began to change in the 5th century CE with the arrival of the Siddham script. Siddham was the first comprehensive lettering system to emerge in northern India, and it evolved from the script of the recently collapsed Gupta Empire. Siddham, unlike Chinese letters, was phonetic. Each letter expressed a sound, either a vowel or a consonant. Siddham letters could be strung into extremely complex and phonetically consistent words. A Siddham word written by someone in northern India could be read by someone in southern China and pronounced exactly the same way. And since the phonetic meaning of a letter never changed, it would be read the same way 1,000 years later as well, unlike ever-shifting Chinese logograms which have continued to evolve and shift since they were born over 3,000 years ago. In Siddham in China and Japan, scholar Saroj Kumar Chaudhuri shows that Chinese scholars took to Siddham with great excitement. Within the space of a few centuries, dozens of monks and even the occasional emperor such as Liang Wu-di used the Siddham script in their innovative translations and commentaries of Indian Buddhist sutras. Chinese monks even wrote grammatical treatises on Sanskrit and Siddham, often using linguistic tools that they developed in India. With the arrival of Tantric Buddhism and Indian teachers like Vajrabodhi and Amoghavajra, Siddham letters further exploded in popularity. Scholars from Japan, such as the 9th century monk Kukai, studied under Indian masters such as the Kashmiri Prajna of Chang'an and took the letters to the furthest reaches of Asia. China became a major Buddhist center in its own right by the 10th century with the growth of new schools such as Chan or Zen Buddhism and unique Chinese cults such as the ones at Mount Tiantai and Mount Wutai. Religious interest in India and Indian letters then faded, though commercial ties grew ever stronger, as historian Tansen shows in Buddhism, Diplomacy and Trade. In India, around the same time, Siddham gradually evolved into the Nagari and thence into the modern Devanagari script. And so it was in Japan that Siddham would survive the longest. Deeply influenced by Indian esoteric Buddhism as well as the logic of Chinese writing systems, Japanese Buddhists developed a system called the Bijakshara or seed syllable. Indian words are written left to right in continuous strokes, optimized for carving. Chinese letters are written top to bottom with strokes optimized for brushes and ink. Bijaksharas combine the features of both. Letters are written top to bottom but using long flowing brush strokes that move left to right. Each Bijakshara is associated with a particular Buddhist deity, and chanting it is believed to bring spiritual benefits. An example of that is still well known in India and can be seen on motorcycle flags and car decor is the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. The use of Siddham in Japan was almost stamped out by the Meiji Restoration, which was a period of nationalism and modernization in the 19th century. But it still continues to be used today by Japanese Buddhist monks and was transmitted to Japanese Buddhist schools in the USA by the 20th century. And so, in parts of California today, under neon lights with European Latin letters, it might be possible for Indian diasporas who can read and write in Devanagari script to live near Japanese reverends who can read and write Siddham script. These two are separated in time and space by 1,000 years and thousands of kilometers, and yet brought together by the ever-enduring forces of globalization. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Follow us on social media everywhere. You can find me on Instagram at Anirbuddha and at Connected Histories, and on Twitter at Kanisetti. We'll see you next week.